Okay, welcome everybody to the Louis Riel Day special. I have an interesting story to share, which it may or may not be true, but it was at least an event in my life that was a catalyst for learning more about Métis culture and Métis music, and the history of the provisional government in Saskatchewan, um, where there was very nearly a indigenous led government overthrow. And it's an incredible piece of Canadian history. And it happened very close to us, even to the point where we could all get into a car right now and drive to the site above, in which it nearly happened. Anybody here ever been to Duck Lake?
Yeah, I've been there.
You ever been to PA?
Yep, I've been to
No,
Prince Albert.
yes, well, not to PA. We stopped in PA. I almost went to Duck Lake, but then my friend's truck broke down halfway through, and we got stuck in -30 weather on the highway.
Of course, yes. That is the most Saskatchewan thing I've ever heard.
Yep. And it was
uh,
funny because we were going to get stuff for his truck.
oh, jeez. So Duck Lake is halfway from here to Prince Albert. That's like the halfway point. There's a giant art gallery there from Glenn Scrimshaw, and it's also a massive historical site and kind of sort of sacred grounds in the traditional homeland of the Métis. Um, just before I get started, I wanted to check on something here. Luca, you've told me that you identify as a Plains Cree person. Is that correct?
Indeed.
Okay. Hunter, would you like to share similar information, or is that too much to ask? Because I've
Sure,
never
yeah.
asked, you've never told.
Yeah, I am Plains Cree, matter of fact, as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I would have guessed maybe Dene, but
No, definitely not. No.
and maybe Dakota, but if I had to put money on it, I would have put Plains Cree. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, anyway, I was really checking to see if anybody had any direct cultural knowledge with Métis and Michif culture, but unless that's true, then I'll go on by stating that clearly I am very white and hold no authority to talk about cultural um, concepts from the Métis standpoint. I can only share that which I have learned and that which is coming through the lens of somebody who has not lived the experience. So I take everything which I'm about to say with a giant grain of salt. I know very little about which I'm talking about, but I feel confident enough to share that which I have learned with the next generation coming up. So I'm assuming going forward that neither of you have been raised in the Métis tradition. Is that correct?
No, not really. No.
A little bit.
A
Yeah.
little bit. Do you want to share anything about that, Luca?
No, because it's very foggy.
As is my knowledge. So I'd like to start off the lesson with us listening to the Métis national anthem. Has anybody
All
heard this
right.
before?
I think so, but I might have forgotten it.
Maybe.
In So before playing this, it's an interesting mix between the kind of European songwriting tradition of there being verse, chorus, verse, bridge, and it's all set to lyrics sort of form, but also at the same time it being predominantly like kind of like repetitive vocal style, like a drone. Um, so it's quite clearly a hybrid piece of music between traditional European songwriting techniques and um, the spirit of ceremonial indigenous music being very repetitive, and I mean that as a compliment, like in a kind of like meditative sort of way. But also the lyrics are in English. So this is like, in my to my knowledge, the only national anthem that has ever been written in humankind that um, applies all of these um, sort of things. So I see it as being really authentic and beautiful. And there's one lyric in there that says, "We are the true Canadians," which is a bold statement to make. And of course, what does being Canadian mean? Like, who gets to claim the concept of being, I am a true Canadian? But you can imagine when these lyrics are being written, and it's being like acclaimed by some board of directors as being like the national anthem of a sovereign group of people, saying something like "We are the true Canadians," and then everybody agreeing on it. That's good. There's some weight to that. So anyway, we'll open this thing with this, and I'll share my story about the connection to Gabriel Dumont that I may or may not have, and then we'll go from there. Here we go.
Right on.
In the forest, on the river, and across the western plain, as the white man journeyed westward to the land of the Indian, a new race was created, a new nation rose up strong. Hardship as its destiny, and its curse to not belong. In the land from which they came, in the land they helped to build, they found themselves the alien, found their vision unfulfilled. And despite their valiant efforts to defend what they believed, when at last the battle ended, they were only left to breathe. We are proud to be Métis, watch a nation rise again, and never more forgotten people with a true Canadian. And for the newest generation and the future ones to come, with the past to motivate us, it will help to keep us strong. And as we build this Métis nation, as we watch it rise again, our past lost its motivation to inspire our future gain. We are proud to be Métis, watch a nation rise again, and never more forgotten people with a true Canadian. And we are proud to be Métis, watch a nation rise again, and never more forgotten people with a true Canadian.
Beautiful lyrics, like speaking the truth of history, no question. And what's, I think, more important is that it's an unaccompanied a cappella thing, which is sort of a metaphor for like uh, how the Métis Nation has been kind of sidelined and disadvantaged purposefully under the colonial lens. And that's kind of, this anthem should not be performed without other instruments, without like the symphonic background of O Canada. And it's not necessarily a sacred thing. Like, you should never put a guitar in the background of this thing, but the spirit of it is just a lone, strong voice singing out. I've never heard it sung by a male. Not that that matters, or somebody who identifies as male. But it's something that I've observed in my participation in like public events where the Métis national anthem is sung. It's 100% of the time been a female. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but it's something to note. This also kind of echoes the tradition of Métis music in general, which is a actual kind of genre or category of music, which is usually accompanied by like somebody tap dancing, which is probably not the right term, but a dancer, a jigger, and a fiddle player. And for those of you who aren't aware, a violin and the fiddle are the same thing, but a violin is played by a white person, and a fiddle is played by somebody who has learned by themselves without the benefit of like colonial pedagogy and stuff. A fiddler is somebody who has studied by themselves to be good, and a violinist is somebody who's trained by others to be good. A fiddler has their own identity. A violinist has that identity bestowed upon them, and neither are either less valid than the other. But the fiddler goes at it alone, and the violinist goes at it with a team of people behind them. I think it's a bit of a mark. Working in orchestras as I have done, it seems to me that the violinists are a tool and the fiddlers are a hero. That's just, I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that, but I see a great mark of honor in being considered a fiddler. Speaking of that, well, I don't know. Do you want to talk about Métis fiddle music for a second, or would you like to hear the story about my connection to Gabriel Dumont? Your choice.
Maybe the story.
Okay. On it. So, trigger warning, mention of firearms.
Okay.
All right. I have to search for a couple of images here. While I'm searching for this, could you guys discuss what Louis Riel means to you? Or what you know about him?
I don't really know anything about him at all. I just know that he was Métis.
Didn't he say, I'm just trying to remember what I learned in my Indigenous Studies class. Didn't he serve as like a translator of sorts?
Certainly he served as a translator. He spoke 7 different languages, none of them being English. French, Plains Cree, Dene, Dakota, Michif, Assiniboine, I could be wrong about that, and Lakota? He spoke 7 indigenous languages to Canada, none of them being English. So I didn't know that he acted as a translator, but he definitely was capable of that. So I would not doubt it for a second. Continue.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I don't really have anything.
Okay.
Wasn't really no one really taught me in elementary school about any of that stuff, so I don't really know.
Which is a damn shame. So maybe I could start making a mark on this. So I don't like. You could trust me as a guitar teacher and as a band teacher and as a computer science teacher, but I consider this me practicing teaching like an intern about Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont. So really briefly, Louis Riel was a member of Parliament for Canada, and through his long tenure in that, was also one of the founders of the province of Manitoba. And way back when Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba were not separate things, it was just like Rupert's Land, a big chunk of prairie, occupied only by the stewards and the indigenous people that protected the land before colonizers. Um, uh, through witnessing what was happening with the Hudson's Bay Company and the colonial agricultural practices and the wiping out of buffalo, Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont, although not necessarily connected directly, were the leaders of a resistance that sought to make the western part of Canada, or at least the prairies, completely independent from Ottawa in both corporate and cultural ways. And they're sort of seen as like the grandfathers of the Métis Nation. And also, although Louis Riel was executed for treason against the crown,
He
or
died.
he
Like,
was
executed.
he was murdered,
Oh my god.
like he was hung
That's messed up, dude.
for
Yes, folks.
yeah. And this was not some kind of like modern political cyber warfare thing. This was like actually like guns and knives and bows and arrows in the late 1800s, about 135 years ago, 140 years ago. Like they mobilized an army to protect the western parts of what is now known as Canada against the Hudson's Bay Company and against the government in Ottawa. This is a really big glossing over of how like really complex that is, but like if I might make a connection to modern day things, although I'm not making an equalization or a parallel, just a reference. Earlier this year on January 6th, there was a mob of infuriated citizens in the United States of America that sought to overthrow the government in a calculated, violent attempt at a coup or a coup de grace, or more or less, we're going to try to murder a bunch of people until we get what we want way. Are you familiar with the insurrection thing on January 6th of this year? Donald Trump
Absolutely.
lost the election, and then that particular event, although traumatic and horrific and probably ridiculous, that's a little bit of my opinion, but I'll let you form your own on that. That particular event is nothing compared to the provisional Saskatchewan government that Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont led. Like a group of Indigenous Canadians leading a military revolt that resulted in casualties. That actually happened, and it's been whitewashed throughout our history classes and lessons in favor of the Renaissance and Mozart and Beethoven and stuff, which is a different topic. But as I get older and I'm learning more about this stuff, I hope to learn more about it, and B, I hope to pass on a little bit about it. So, okay, Louis Riel, long story short, tried to, as an Indigenous Canadian, overthrow the government, and Gabriel Dumont was one of his sort of like military generals. That's not exactly accurate, but just think of it like that in your head. This is a Trump and Pence And although I'm so sorry to use that disgusting human beings names in the same sentence, um, in the same metaphor anyway, as Riel and Dumont. That's only to draw a modern comparison, but that's anyway. I'm not sure if that makes sense in your head or not, but these are like how you know what even better Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. Is that a little bit more relevant?
I don't watch Star Wars, but that does that makes a lot of sense actually. So
The rebellion against the establishment.
were they bad
Makes sense.
people?
Makes sense.
Okay. I pulled that one out of the fire there. I'm going to show you a picture of Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont.
Mr. Ballin.
Yep.
Oh, were they bad people or anything, or
Who?
Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont? Like,
Well,
for doing that, or not really?
I hesitate to make like a moral judgment on things because I wasn't there and I'm very white and was educated that way. So I want to say, generally speaking, the cultural knowledge and the historical knowledge we have says that, you know what? I guess I'll just share my opinion. My opinion is that Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont were painted as traitors and treasonous to the Canadian government because they didn't represent the colonial and corporate and capitalist interests of the Crown and of the Canadian government at the time.
Okay.
And modern history is painting it more like these are heroes of Indigenous identity who should be celebrated, and thus why I'm talking about Louis Riel Day. That's not to say that I support insurrection against the government, but I also don't know what it means to be oppressed. I have no idea. So anyway, to answer your questions, are these bad people? At the time, the government in power said yes. History says
In the eyes of the government, yes.
at the time. Now, the general kind of like what I see to be the undercurrent is that no, Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont were heroes. The main building at the University of Saskatchewan is named Place Riel, or Louis Riel Place. There are two universities in Saskatchewan, the Gabriel Dumont Institute and the Indian Institute of Technologies, are named after Gabriel Dumont. These, in the eyes of Métis and Indigenous Canadians, are saviors, are an example of not bowing to colonialism.
Right on.
I'm not sure if I answered your question, but anyway, that's what I've heard about it and how I know about it. Anyway, here's a picture of Louis Riel. Wait, can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, I see it.
And here's a picture of Gabriel Dumont. Gabriel Dumont was a hunter chief who was one of the first documented people to go, dude, there's less buffalo than there used to be. This ain't good. That was, in my understanding, one of the reasons that he was kind of like seen as a visionary and as a leader, because it was his observations about buffalo populations that were able to be recorded and shared. Okay. What, of course, makes a big deal. As soon as buffalo goes away, it means different agricultural practices, which means the change in how the land behaves. And if there's a whole bunch of people coming in from Europe and they don't know how to deal with buffalo, guess what? They're probably going to farm the hell out of this place and so forth. Here we are. Anyway, so back to the story. this is a real long diversion as to the actual story I was talking about. Okay. So, Duck Lake. Remember back there, halfway to PA?
Yeah.
My dad, who's 71 now, his dad, who's long since passed away, was a contractor and dealt with a lot of demolition things in like the mid 60s, and was called in to do things like, hey, this farmhouse burnt, this barn or whatever burnt down. Can you come and clean it up so we can build a different one? And then my dad, being like 13, 14, 15, old enough to do labor, would go with his dad to clean up farmhouses. You got a call to deal with a burnt out farmhouse in Duck Lake. And they, dug out the basement and cleared it out, and they found this like really dilapidated shotgun. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, having no use for, a burnt out shotgun, saying like, "Hey son, do you want this?" And he gave it to him as a gift. So he kept it, and then it moved with him wherever he went and so forth, and eventually it was just on his mantle at his home as like a centerpiece, just like this shotgun, burnt out and sort of like shithoused, so to speak, on his mantle. And I always saw it growing up. I was like, "Dad, what's that?" He's like, "Oh, it's a gun my dad found and gave it to me." "Oh, it's a gun my dad found and gave it to me." And never really thought anything of it. So remember, this is a farmhouse in Duck Lake, like right where like the Red River skirmish happened, like an actual battleground, historical site. Of course, ignored by history, whitewashed, etc. Not like a protected anthropological, archaeological site, but just kind of sat there and eventually was farmed. I didn't know that at the time. But through a long series of me doing some research and tracking stuff down, eventually I became engaged to a wonderful woman named Stephanie, who you've met. And her dad is a firearms enthusiast and a cowboy action shooter. He makes his own gunpowder and makes his own bullets like in his house. And I thought, what a great way to bond with my new father-in-law than to get him to teach me about firearms. So he taught me about firearms. One time I fired a 7-inch bullet, Smith & Wesson 5-shooter, 52 caliber. So
That's awesome.
like a bullet the size of your thumb.
Oh.
It was bananas, like silver handle, nickel plated, incredible tool. It's useless to do anything other than just bang and I hit myself in the face with it because the recoil was so big. It's insane. So I eventually ended up getting my PAL, which is a possession and acquisition license for firearms. I still haven't used it. I've never bought anything. But I thought a great way to bond with him would be to show him this old gun that my dad had. So I went to my dad and said, like, "Hey, would you mind like lending me this thing?" He's like, "Yeah, go ahead. I don't care. It's an old piece of shit. Who cares?" So he gives it to me. And I showed it to my father-in-law, and he's like, "Oh, wow, I've never seen anything like this. Like, it's a different kind of steel. It's got this thing where, like, because it's a crack top, like, like if you've ever played any kind of, like, first-person shooter game, there's shotguns that you can pump, and then there's shotguns that you crack open to put the slug or the shell in."
Yeah.
And he, I said, like, "I've never seen one of these things." I said, "It's a crack top. And also, most of the time, when you're using a crack top firearm, it's on the right-hand side, like the lever to open it up. But this one has got like a big piece of iron attached to it so that you could reach it underneath with your left hand." And like manufacturers were not manufacturing weapons at the time that this was created for left-handed people. So somebody had to take this weapon, this firearm, and modify it without breaking it to be usable quickly by a left-handed person. Because otherwise you'd have to reach over top and the thing, and then if you're riding a horse, you would have to like swing it over and then bring it to the other side. But this is quite clearly not like an average, some, you know, Joe Q shotgun user would have had. This would have been something that was modified for somebody special,
Yeah.
or at least modified by a genius of some kind. But because I still have it and it still works, and it was in a burned out farmhouse, this was a quality piece, like this clearly. And it had like this long leather thong around it with like a spring, which is since broken, that you like could tug on the leather handle, and then like the thing would crack and it would open up. Anyway, so who fought in the Battle of Duck Lake? None other but Gabriel Dumont. And this was not a military battle in the sense like that you might be used to, being somebody who might have played first-person shooters, but this was like only the officers and the important folks had firearms, and everybody else had like guns, knives, rocks, armor, maybe a sling. Like this was not everybody had a gun. This was only the important folks had a gun. So my father-in-law sees this thing. He's like, let's take this thing to a gunsmith, see if they can make anything out of it. So I take it to a gunsmith with him, and I give it to them, and they said, yeah, let me go in the back with this for a second, see what I can see. And he takes a look at it, and I can hear people talking in the back, and one of them goes like, "Holy shit! No way! What is this? No, I can't. No, I can't be. What's going on?"
Holy.
And there's about like 20 minutes of this, and then he kind of like slowly saunters out, like big Duck Dynasty looking white guy. Clearly knows his stuff about firearms, and he says like, "Yeah, I'll give you $20."
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, no, I wasn't asking to sell it to you. I was wondering if you could tell me anything about it. He's like, well, no, I don't really know. This thing is real old. You know, every farmer would have had one of these, you know, back in the day. It's not really worth anything, but I could use it, and you know, maybe put it on display. I'll tell you what, I'll give you $50. And my father-in-law pulls me over. He said, like, because he knew the guy, and he didn't know that I was going to be his, like, you know, son-in-law eventually. So he pulls me aside and says, like, something's weird. Like, don't give him any money. Let's walk. So I walked.
Yeah.
And I never went back there. And I can kind of tell that, like, the guy was like, shit, I gambled and lost on that one.
L.
So I had no idea. At this point, I had no idea that there was anything potentially to this thing at all. Anything even close. I'm just like, hey, here's this cool gun. I'm showing it to my future father-in-law. Maybe we could bond over it. And then he takes me to this thing, and then, you know, this happens, and maybe I've got something here. So I started doing some research. He starts doing some research. And I looked up a couple of things. One, there is a 6-digit serial number on it that's actually imprinted on the muzzle. It's a single load, slug only thing. So this is not a hunting weapon. This is a military weapon. And it's also got the stamp of St. Paul Armory. The St. Paul Armory was an organization that in the late part of the 18th century supplied arms, not tools, but arms to the Red River Rebellion. The St. Paul Armory is funded by the Catholic Church. And that's a very rare stamp to have on a gun. And also, you know, there wouldn't have been tons of these things around. So I have a shotgun that was modified to be left-handed for clearly an officer that has a 6-digit serial number and the stamp of the St. Paul Armory that was found at Duck Lake. Let me show you this picture of Gabriel Dumont again.
Which hand was it again? For like this,
For
like
left
he
hand.
shot with this hand, or like the right one, or the left
Here's Gabriel Dumont
one?
holding a shotgun in his left hand.
Oh,
Do you have that gun?
Luca, I might. I have no way of proving it. I have no way of proving it.
That's pretty cool.
But I tell you what, I certainly didn't sell it for $50 to Duck Dynasty, dude. So, this has nothing to do with music, other than the fact that it led me down a rabbit hole of learning about Métis culture better than the textbooks that I experienced in high school were able to do. So, the question is, would you like to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Oh my god, dude.
Oh my god.
Now, if that doesn't look like the one in the picture,
Let's see the picture. Don't shoot yourself with it, Mr. Brown.
it wouldn't be possible. So it's long. It's about 5 feet long. And the butt has been sanded down to work on your left shoulder too, which is interesting. Here's the mechanism. I couldn't figure out how to do this for the longest time, but there's this piece right here
Yeah.
that had a spring and a leather like thong going around the outside, so that when you're holding it on your left side, this is my left hand, I know it's mirrored, you could go over here instead of having to go around the other side and click the thingy. It's been modified heavily, and the only way to open it is to tug like hell on this thing. Oh, shit, I can't even do it with my left hand. God damn. There. Then it opens. This is not something that's used by a farmer to defend from coyotes and stuff. This is a slug only, totally rusted out thing with, yeah, that might be it. It might be. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'll show you the stamp on it. Nope, wait, hold on, where is it? There it is. This might not work.
I can't see it. I can't.
Yeah. Anyway, right there it says St. Paul Armory.
That's so cool. Oh my god.
And there's a metal piece that's missing on top of it that you would usually cover this so that you don't get gunpowder in your face after you fire it. But that ain't no hunting weapon. That's an infantry weapon. That's a sit in your cabin, Kill Bill style and wait kind of weapon and reload quickly. So that took years of research, and it was hold on, I'm gonna find more about this. He also had revolvers and stuff too. But this, I should probably talk to a real historian about this. Oh yeah, he had a couple more that were like gold plated and stuff. Yeah, there's some replicas. Oh, cool. I've never seen this before. Hold on. There we go. You see that?
No.
What? Yeah?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
That's very similar.
Ooh.
That's a hammer action one. But it's the same kind of deal. Anyway. So, if you, there's a statue of Gabriel Dumont in Friendship Park where the jazz festival used to be.
Mm-hmm.
He's riding a horse, and he's got a firearm like this, and it's on his left-hand side. So, anyway, I could be way out to lunch. I have no idea. I could completely be wrong, but I believe there's reason to believe that I might have Gabriel Dumont's shotgun. which of course led me down a rabbit hole of, learning about Métis culture and like the true history of colonialism in Canada. So I'm grateful for that. Happy Louis Riel Day last Tuesday. That's it.
That's a lot to process.
It is. I'm still very thankful every day of this thing. Of course, I told my dad about this. And he goes, Gabriel Dumont? Who? Who's that? How do you not know who Gabriel Dumont is?
That's funny.
Anyway, okay. Y'all want to listen to some Métis music?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I've got my essay.
So, why do you think the fiddle, the violin, is a choice instrument of Métis musicians? What are your guesses? Why is it not tuba?
Well, I guess for my theory is that it was brought over from like Europe and stuff, eh? So they thought it was a cool. That was loud.
Sorry.
That was really loud. That's really loud.
Sorry.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then they thought it was cool, and then they just the Métis decided to play it. That's kind of my theory.
Practically speaking, though, clearly the trumpet, trombone, tuba, double bass, etc., were all brought over from Europe. Why isn't like the bassoon then, right?
Okay, just wait.
I don't know. I'm trying to think, but I can't think of anything. Maybe they seen the violin and were like, let's make something new. I don't know.
Because you can carry it on a boat.
Oh.
Because how are you going to play guitar and then the shit gets all wet? Play it on a boat. It's more compact and more likely to survive the journey.
True.
Now, if this music doesn't sound like you are rolling down the river in a monster canoe with your family, it's again, like, I love Indigenous music because it sounds like the land around you. Ceremonial Cree music sounds like open space. It sounds like eagles calling. This music sounds like traveling in rolling, bumpy, dangerous waterways. And it's beautiful. Here we go.
Hello everybody, my name is Brianna Lizotte and I want to talk to you guys and share a little bit of my knowledge on the Métis fiddle. Now, the fiddle has been around for a very, very long time and of course comes from the classical music from the violin. And when the Europeans first came over for the fur trade and were voyageurs, they brought their music onto the canoes. Now, when a voyageur was hired, it was one musician and one really strong singer. Now, because of adding this music, it needed a purpose to be on this canoe. They needed to have that music on the canoes with them is because they needed to have everybody in time and in tempo with each other. That made it less likely that the canoe will flip over. Now, from the European side, not only do we take the instrument itself, but it's the melodies and the beats we also take. But from the First Nation side, it's the rhythms and the beats. So these unique styles coming together create something really new and exciting, because with the First Nations rhythms and beats and the European melodies, this creates and makes our melody a little bit crooked. Now what this means is every couple of measures a beat is either added or dropped, and this either adds, elongates a note or shortens it. And it's really funky to listen to. And it wasn't uncommon to have really big Métis families. They would, if you were a musician, your kids probably would be like, hey, I want to try the fiddle. And especially back then when Métis families really couldn't afford European materials. So what they started to do was they made their own. These were called land fiddles. The wood, everything wooden you see on the fiddle here was made from maple or birch. Same with the bow. This hair here is actually from horsehair. And still to this day, people use horsehair because it's just the best quality and gives the best quality of sound. Strings nowadays, they are steel strings, and these were only invented in 1910 and didn't really get popular until after World War II. So what they used before in the time of the fur trade and also way back in European history was sheep intestine. Now, sheep intestine just by itself, even though going through a process of making it playable, it would still have a very muted sound to it. Now, how they would fix that problem or try to make the sound quality a bit better was they would wrap the string with silver, and to color coat the string, it would be silk. Now with these added materials, of course, silver and silk are very expensive, so this made the gut strings a lot more pricier. So Métis homes and Métis families started to use their own animals for their strings. So those are some really cool facts that I love to talk about when it comes to the history of the Métis fiddle.
So I don't know if that means anything to you, but that blows my mind. That's an instrument that's built out of the trees that are around you, with the knowledge from a different part of the planet, and the strings are the guts of an animal, and the bow is the hair of an animal. It's just a piece of nature that indigenous intellect crafted into something beautiful. Like, I'd never really thought about that before looking into Métis music, that this instrument is just trees and animal hair and animal guts processed with the power of the human mind.
And lots of love.
Yeah, lots of love. And probably trial and error.
Exactly, Mr. Ballin.
Now, I wanted to play one thing before we go here. Has anybody heard of the instrument of the hurdy-gurdy?
Yes, I've had.
Okay, tell me about it. What do you know?
Okay, just give me 1 second. So yeah, it's like an instrument. It's a stringed instrument, matter of fact.
It is.
Like there's like things like right here, and then they turn it, and then I think it's not like piano. I don't know. It's like buttons, and then they turn it, and then it makes, and then they go back, and then that's like my best explanation of a hurdy-gurdy. It's a really cool instrument.
You're pretty much right on there. Hold on, just let me find the video that I'm trying to find here. Sorry.
And they're big too. They're like chunky.
They're not massive, but they're
okay.
They're definitely bigger than a violin, but in the same sort of smaller than a cello.
Okay, so then yeah, I have pretty bad perspective issues, so I have like trouble thinking. So yeah.
Hold on. Where's the right video for this? Okay, there we go. Okay, so the hurdy-gurdy is more or less an instrument that's a violin that's been manipulated so that you don't have to bow it manually. You turn a crank, and the bow just goes, and you have constant sounds, and you can manipulate the strings with your fingers or with keys and stuff. It's like the perfect marriage between a fiddle, and a piano, like, but still bowed. Let me show you a picture of one. Now, at this point, this has nothing to do with, not nothing, but like a limited connection to Métis culture, because that's certainly something that's not native to Métis culture. But here's a hurdy-gurdy. It's a violin that's got like a series of like cranks and stuff on it that you can just turn the button, turn the thing, and then it plays the string for you, and you change the length of a string with a button. And it's really cool. And my goodness, if I ever have the opportunity to play one of these things someday, I would be a very happy man. I'm already a happy man, but my goodness, that's on my bucket list. I tell you what, it's playing the hurdy-gurdy. So I wanted to play this recording because I think it's fair to say that this instrument was inspired by the solo musician out on the land with a violin, which is inherently connected to Métis musical traditions. So here we go. and it sounds like birds and stuff. Oh, it's so cool. What do you think of that?
Very squeaky.
It's like
Very
almost
cool.
hypnotic, right?
Yes, it is.
How that
That was-
particular instrument doesn't have more like cultural kind of clout, I don't know, but it's awesome.
That was beautiful. It made me happy.
Magical.
Me too.
Felt like I was in a fantasy realm, and it was great.
Yeah. There's other examples of this. The Nordic keyed fiddle is another good one, which we're going to talk about in the music, the Icelandic music unit, which we're going to be doing in December. And yeah, anyway, that's all I have to offer about that. Anybody want to talk about anything else?
No.
Brain empty, no thought.
Good. A state of just of just void.
State of void.
Love it. All right, well then I will bid you adieu for the night. Thank you very much for being here with me, and we'll see you when I see you. Hunter, I'm not sure what's going on in the afternoon tomorrow, but that'd probably be a good opportunity to work on your metal tune a little bit more.
Sure. I'd like to do that.
Luke, I'm going to try to mix the Beetlejuice thing as much as I can tomorrow and over the weekend so I can get that released by Tuesday.
Swag, okay.
Right on.
Word. All right, well, I'll stop the recording at this point. It's for the benefit of the people who won't watch us on YouTube. I'm kidding.